Okay, so I'm a planner. A footnote loving, Library of Congress catalog numbering, schedule making ducks in a row kind of planner. And this week was supposed to be episode 3 on voting, which is a great episode. And hashtag Me Too What Next was supposed to be episode 7. But then this happened.
Tonight, it is my honor and privilege to announce that I will nominate Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court.
And everything went out of order. Sort of like that day I was 6, and that day I was 13, and the day I was 20, and the day I was 22, none of which I had planned for. You get the picture. My friend, the Reverend Mary Sue Brookshire, had given me an hour of the most beautiful tape about how she, as a former Southern Baptist and now as a pastor of a racially diverse UCC congregation here in San Diego, leads in the hashtag MeToo era while being a survivor herself. She gave me wisdom about stamina and walking each other carefully through trauma, and the importance to democracy of learning to sit with difficult stories. But that was back in June, before I started hearing so very many grown women start to talk about, quote, burning it down. Don't know what, but burning it down in those very terms. So I texted Mary Sue and I said, are you willing to let me make you breakfast again and come sit at my kitchen table and talk through it? She said, my body hurts and I'm in a fog and I want to burn it down, but yes. And I said, oh, good, because I've always wanted to use the phrase slight return, Jimi Hendrix fans, you'll understand, as the title to a creative piece. And these episodes are as close to perfect as my amateur self knows how to get them, but not this one. You're going to hear us just as we were at the kitchen table last Friday morning, with the whole drama of Senator Jeff Flake unfolding in the background. You're going to hear the dog, and you're going to hear breakfast. My sound producer will probably fire me for this, but it felt way more important to respond authentically to this challenging moment for democracy than to hold it all together. So we're not going to go deep into trauma land because God knows I've had enough this week. But I think it is good to narrate what we felt, just as the adrenaline after effects, just how the physical it's been, how weird that's been, and then what's changed, and then 2 or 3 questions. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just get everything up and running.
And yeah,
I don't want.
if you don't get anything from me, you can use.
You keep saying that, but your authenticity is the biggest gift. Because that's the thing, you said, I don't know if I have anything pastoral to say. And I said, I don't care. I think, because there's a thing I think is good. So when we got together last time, you and I, we sat here and you were so beautiful. And you still are, but you were beautiful in that way where it's all organized. Okay, so you were so elegant and organized and composed and good. You were so good. And I think that's a whole nother level of pressure. I was watching the hearings yesterday in the women and gender studies department conference room at SDSU.
I saw you open that up.
Hashtag they opened it up. Thank you, Professor Doreen Mattingly. And, Professor Mattingly Doreen observed, look at how hard she's trying to be good in her testimony.
Did you ever apologize?
Uh-huh.
She apologized so many times.
Yeah.
Like just for not knowing when to take a break. Asking if it, like when they said, would you like to take a break now? Would that be okay?
Yeah. No, it's a whole habit of being for all of us, right? Hi, I'm sorry, my rage might interrupt your work day. But this week has called my attention very physically to the fact that my rage will interrupt my work week. It will I have held my life together with so many means and organizings and strategies and office products and self-improvement and yoga. I have held it together, and I have been drunk since on rage, adrenaline. I have had adrenaline running since Sunday, and I am tired. And so physically, I think it's important for people to know if you're feeling like you've had adrenaline running since Sunday, you're just not in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had, so my stomach is hurt. I felt foggy. I felt really foggy and just jittery, just like,
My sleep has definitely been
Oh, yeah.
disrupted.
Mine too.
So I listened as long as I could yesterday morning. But when she recounted, the thing she remembered most was the laughter.
The laughter is so true.
I was alone in my house and I fell on the floor. I literally felt like somebody had kicked me in the gut and the wind left my body and I fell down. And then I just started sobbing. And even in that moment, I was like, have I repressed something I don't remember? Or is this just the collective keening that we're doing? To hear someone else, because quite honestly, I can't figure out how you can hear her and doubt her veracity. But I know there are a lot of people doing it. At the end of the day, though, I'm trying to figure out on Sunday when I stand in front of my congregation, some of whom voted for our current president and some of whom didn't, some of whom I'm sure want to push all this aside as just political machinations. I want to step aside from that and say, turn and look at the person on your left. Now look at the person on your right. Now look at the person in front of you and look at the person behind you. I guarantee you at least one of them has a story. And maybe all of them do. And how are we gonna heal this? I saw some, you'll let it out my swearing, won't you? I saw some quote from Lindsey Graham this morning about how if Kavanaugh is not confirmed, it'll rip our country apart.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. Mm-hmm.
No, what's gonna rip this country apart is when we burn this place to the ground. Because we're not gonna keep those secrets anymore. Was it your friend Courtney? That's all these women have been keeping these secrets.
C. Jane, yeah. Courtney Jane Kendrick, the wise woman of Provo, Utah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's what I've been trying to explain to my girls. Is that bad stuff is still happening. But when bad stuff happened to us, we kept it all right inside, under our skin. We held it for so many years, and it did things like these eating disorders. I did not feel at home in my own body until maybe 5 years ago, after having children and feeling a sense of competence and a sense of oh my gosh, my body actually worked. I was shocked that my body worked when I had children. I felt so unfunctional in my own body. And I know it's because I felt damaged and I felt at odds with myself and hateful of myself. And that came out with just some real fun eating disorders and a lot of depression and all that. And that's so common. So yeah, no. I mean, that's the change. But I think the gift of this moment is that all of us are no more done. There's no right way to do this. Look at her, she had the doctor title, she had the blue suit, she had the, patient and polite demeanor. She has a PhD in psychology, could explain her own hippocampus. And that's, I think,
the week is hippocampus.
Well, and that's, but that's, I think, part of another thing that you and I talked about a little bit last time that I see unfolding and falling apart right now. That's the promise of this moment is white women have kept white men's secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And have been expected to and groomed to, and some still do, and there's a payoff for that. And then you have to pay your own way if you won't keep the secrets. And second wave feminists knew you needed economic equality so you could get out if you needed to. And so now that we have more of that, we have literally the option not to lose where we live or to lose our helplessness. That's the thing, the learned helplessness that is also the pedestalizing. But yeah, no, white women are telling the secrets of powerful white men now because that's interesting in a good way. But it leaves me to wonder, is the degree of adrenaline fog that you and I feel this week what African American women feel on the regular?
On the daily.
And I know I don't like to compare oppressions, it's not right. And you can't compare because they live intersectional, because they're feeling all of this too in their own way.
Right. At the end of the day, it's not a contest.
It's not a contest, but this physical fog, and I think of the research on weathering and African American women's bodies. There's a whole public health line of argument that structural racism lived day after day has contributed to chronic health problems, including higher mother and infant mortality rates. So last time you said we've got to learn to sit with this so that we build the stamina for doing the hard work of undoing other kinds of privilege. Do we still need to sit with it? Now, what do we do with this now? You don't have to have an answer, just talk it through with me.
Yeah. Well, I've been thinking a lot about that. Even after I first said it, I was like, I do mean it. I mean it in that one-to-one interpersonal way that when someone tells you their story, like hold it, believe it, listen to it.
Yep.
And have compassion, right? That word, I think we talked about this, suffer with. Like suffer with them. If they trust you with it, sit and hold it and feel it. And I feel like what I saw this week was the absolute opposite of that.
Yeah.
In terms of like dismissing and explaining away. And I don't mean that I don't care if he's confirmed or not. Like, I care a lot. But I am troubled on a much...
The dog.
Fiona,
come! Fiona, come! Yes, he's keep us safe. Thank you. Leave your chewing. You were saying you were troubled on a much deeper level. Why?
Well, I'm troubled that we didn't hear her. I'm troubled by the people. I'm especially troubled by the women who heard her but didn't hear her. Who listened but didn't even open the possibility for one moment of the reality of her experience.
How do you understand that? And one of the things my friend Courtney, the great blogger, you should all read, wrote about was, she's been really fierce about holding other white women accountable for facilitating this kind of mess. And maybe one of the responsible things we can do is, how long did we fail to hold white men accountable when they would harm women of color?
Okay, let's talk about that. Our soft power and our turning the other and not being fully in the fight with them if it meant turning against the men who are paying our rent. And that's not you and me in particular. That's our general racial tribe. Okay, we did that. And now we're seeing how white women do it to us. So how do we, white women do it to each other now in public?
Yeah, I mean, I've been wrestling a lot this week too with this idea of internalized oppression, right? And I haven't studied that since I was in grad school a million years ago, but this idea that we internalize the lies about us that they're telling us to keep us in place. We become, like, I was so moved. I read the post, Courtney CJ, I don't know what she goes by, but where she was describing her encounter with Kirby, is that his name? But that she included that picture, right? She's looking at her own behavior in that moment and asking, why did I do that? And it was me. Like, it's not even that I didn't stand up for these other women. I didn't stand up for myself.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's asking herself that hard question. But the way she narrated that, I was like, are you inside my head?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How have we even become our own enemies?
Yes.
And I don't know. I don't have an easy, good answer for that. But I do think in my own experience, I think back to how I was shaped, especially how I was shaped in the church. And I love the church, but the church ain't Jesus.
Preach.
And the church, whatever their intentions, I mean, God, the patriarchy, like, it's just so deeply ingrained everywhere. Like, it's the air. It's just the air. But the church reinforced the idea that I don't count. I don't count as much as he counts. That's what's also come home to me in a powerful, powerful way this week, and I am furious. We don't count.
No. Yes, thousands of Mormon women for ethical government. And they developed carefully this beautiful, moderate document calling on 4 Mormon men we are so overrepresented on the Senate Judiciary Committee. It is sick. But including Jeff Flake, who had nothing to lose, who's been acting like he's a foe of Trump, acting like he's a moral human being, who didn't even have the backbone to call for an FBI investigation, which was offered to Anita Hill, offered in the Anita Hill instance and not this one. And their appeal was completely rebuffed and ignored. But how else could it be? The men in authority in our traditional traditions do not begin to hear us. So you can't ask them for anything. We have to do this for ourselves. And that was the lie of it, right? If you play your role, you'll be taken care of. That was the lie of it.
Right.
And there's none of that. Because being taken care of means they'll do with you what they want. They'll represent it as they want. And you'll get enough. If something, status, rank, you'll get enough. Because I see status. I see how women who disbelieve other women get status in faith communities, in traditional communities, and conservative communities. If you're the arch defender of noxious intemperance, which is the very least one could say about Judge Kavanaugh, if you're the arch defender of noxious intemperance, you get points. You get access. You get rectitude and righteousness and patriotism. You get all that. But
do you think they know they're selling their soul to the devil? No, I mean that as a real question. Like, do you think they consciously realize the barter they're making?
No.
Or do you think the air is just so thick with all this that it's only in these like very volatile moments that we somehow all wake up and go, oh my God, the air is poison. It's poison. Don't breathe.
Exactly.
Quick, stop breathing.
That's the best. Quick, stop breathing.
Quick. Because you don't even know how the air in your own lungs might be poisoning you. Like,
No, that's what, that's truly put, right?
but yeah, like, so I would stand by my statement in terms of how we relate to one another, especially the people with whom we have some trust. Only really with people we have some trust. Don't throw those pearls before swine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I'm tired of talking about my stories. I'm so tired, and they're all the same now. Pack of laughing boys, check. You know, intoxication of some form, check. Outnumbered, check. Outsized, check.
But okay, so here's what
I'm tired of telling my stories.
But here's what blew my mind last night. In my kitchen, talking to my husband, who has really had ears to listen through this. But I asked him, I was like, how was it at work yesterday? Or today, actually, but yesterday, now. And I said, did you talk to any women? He's like, no, it was really obvious something was up with the women. I'm like, yeah, a lot was up. But the men, like when he shared with the men something I had said to him, I told him, I said, I don't know a woman without a story. And I'm not saying every story
Is the same kind of story.
is the same kind of story,
That's right.
but I said, I don't know a woman without a story. And I said, I would be willing to wager you don't either. And he said that to some of the men with whom he works. And they were shocked. This was news to them. But then one of them said, yeah, my wife, she's got a story. And in that moment, I thought, wow, is it really possible? I guess it is. They don't know.
Yeah.
Men don't actually know that surrounding them every moment are women who've lived these stories. They have the gift of ignorance. They cannot know. They can move around and operate. They can go to the grocery store at night and they can like walk to their cars in parking garages and they can actually not know.
Right. And all I can compare it to in my mind is I don't know what it's like to be a person of color at all, but I do know what it's like to be a white person waking up to the fact I've been an idiot. I've been ignorant and sheltered and privileged and helped and advanced and nurtured and coddled and protected. Quote, quote, protected when I wasn't being assaulted. or, you know, abused in other ways or devalued or minimized or shamed. Yeah, when that wasn't happening, I was quote, quote, privileged, right? But that's what the great W.B. Du Bois said, is like this pittance, this whiteness is this pittance of this trade-off, right? It's like they say to poor whites, Black Reconstruction's book, they say to poor whites, you have nothing, but you have whiteness, yay! So anyway, but can men do the work of learning to see their own idiocy, acknowledging that some men are also survivors?
Absolutely. Let's just put that front and center because it's important that we don't.
I mean, not really, is that, you know,
this.
ignorant, being that there are things that they not have to live, most men have not had to live in their bodies. What most women have. They don't know what that is. They don't have to be prey all the time. Some men do. Some men, queer men, you know, LGBTQ, you know.
Yeah. I had, yeah.
And men who are bullied too. This is the story I want to crack open. Like, I'm tired of my story. I know her story. I know your story. They're all so similar. What I don't know is how does it feel to be the guy whose buddy is raping somebody while you laugh? Why are you that guy? Why are you that guy?
Right.
What does that feel? What kind of humiliation is that for you? How does that degrade your very soul? What do you have to gain by getting out of there now, 30 years later? You know, what have men told those stories?
Yeah, I mean, I will say a few things. Number one, I think the most hopeful thing I've seen, and social media has not been the most soothing place to be the last 48 hours. But probably one of the most hopeful things I saw was a post from a man I've known since he was 5, 6, and now he's, I don't even know, 20s or 30s. But he was naming the work that men need to be doing right now. And so I do think that, yes, they can, to a degree, right? They can do the work that's theirs to do. Will they ever know what this experience is like? No, any more than I'll know what it's like to be a person of color. But I can sure dedicate myself to being as aware and as compassionate as I can be.
Well, and of the ways that our not knowing, our ignorance and the segregation of our lives degrades us, right?
Yeah.
Whiteness degrades us because we lose our humanity. This stuff degrades men.
Right.
It degrades Brett Kavanaugh. He has been degraded by whatever his father taught him. Whatever the men who raised him taught him hurt him. It made him into an embarrassment yesterday. If you are called to account, you don't show up and cry. You show up and you soberly reflect, present, demonstrate some temperance, demonstrate some character. You hold it together, you know? So whatever his father taught him and all the people around him taught him, they degraded him. He is the degraded one. And he and everybody who is in danger of becoming like him wins when they find another way to be. If you're called to account, you gotta stand up and make an honest self-examination. We don't have the power to hurt you, but you have the power to undo yourself, undo your soul. You know. Okay, 2 more questions.
Yeah.
And you're awesome. I mean, I think everyone just needs to hear free flow rage with 2 grown women. Well, another thing I'm learning is we need to sit together and talk. So, having your friend over and cooking her food and sitting at the kitchen table and just sorting this out feels better than social media. It actually does.
Oh my God.
Social media
100 times better
cray.
than social media.
I mean, I like it because I can see my friends across the country that way, but I am not in my body when I'm in social media, and I kind of need to be grounded. Okay, so taking it out to democracy, and I know you're a pastor and not but you're a citizen. So what does it mean? In the course of recording this set of episodes on this subject, I think something Sharon Black said that was so good that helped me a lot was sometimes a wrong does not rise to the level of a crime, and yet it is a wrong. And this becomes especially noticeable when law is in the hands and in the service of privilege. So what does it mean when law is not an instrument of justice, but an instrument of privilege? Because that's what it was yesterday on full display. It's been like that a lot in a lot of instances in the United States history, right? Laws relating to the taking of native land and the ownership of Black people. It's law in the service of privilege, not justice. So how do we then shift? How do we think about morality if the law has done this to itself? I mean, these are lawyers who have done this. These are judges who are doing this to us and to themselves. I mean, God bless the ABA for saying, can we call the FBI? Just saying, as your colleagues in the law, we might want to have due process here. But, I mean, so is this when do we have a public morality? Is this where there's a space for all of our religious ethics, for the little light that lives inside of us, to know what is wrong, if the law is the instrument of the privileged?
That is a great question. And I don't, my first thought is what a difficult truth that is to acknowledge, how scary a truth that is for people to acknowledge. And I wonder if the fear that immediately gets uncovered when you acknowledge that is enough to keep people from acknowledging, right? It feels like it feels like acknowledging finally, the emperor's naked.
Not all laws, but I mean, look how the rule of law was used this summer to legitimate imprisonment of refugees. They broke the law by it's a misdemeanor. Unlawful entry is a misdemeanor. And you separate them from their children.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Rule of law is the fascists and authoritarians' favorite excuse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know this, that in a similar way in my own life, that I, before this recent election, operated without the daily awareness of misogyny and patriarchy. Like, I'm not saying it wasn't there. I'm just saying it wasn't, I didn't feel it on a daily basis.
You were a good white woman. You kept it in a Tupperware in your spleen.
Yeah, you know.
With a bow.
That stuff sealed up. You know, I probably had a vacuum seal to make sure it didn't leak too. Trademark vacuum seal. But so in a way that, like, certainly the election and, oh my gosh, recent events have really brought home in some visceral ways how hated femininity and women are. But I feel like I was asleep a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like I've been pretty asleep when it comes to my own democratic responsibilities, like my own responsibilities as a citizen, right? Because, as Martin Niemöller said, they didn't come for me. They weren't coming for me. And I don't mean that I didn't care. I mean, I do try to be on the side of justice.
Of course,
and
you
I
vote
try to
and you
show
do all the
up.
things.
But I mean, like, calling my elected officials or participating in the process beyond voting.
Yeah.
Like, I think I've thought of my contribution as more like through the church.
But I think it is. I mean, I think the church, like, you look at an African American community, again, not comparing experiences or oppressions, but drawing on the richness of that history that precedes us and that has so much to teach us. So the church has played a powerful supplemental role when civil society has failed, and it has held up the reminder of what morality looks like. You know, religion holds up the reminder of what morality looks like across the borders of nations and states, because nations are instruments that become so corrupted, right? Okay, that's a hard question. Final question. The great Audre Lorde, I always think of her, said, we can learn to work when we are angry the same way we can learn to work when we are tired. She wrote that in her book, Sister Outsider. My question is, what is the work of this moment? Because we have the anger, we have the adrenaline hangover, or the adrenaline fog. Like, where do we start? Or what do we do?
You mean besides burn it down?
Besides burn down. That's the thing. We don't know what do we burn down?
Well, that's what I realized. Like, I'm so mad, and I say burn it down, but it's all still packaged up in my Tupperware in my spleen, right? Like, I'm not a burn it down kind of girl, right?
I have been that person.
I'm still a good Southern girl who gets nervous at the thought I might upset anyone.
Okay, so that's what we need to burn down. We have an action item.
Yeah.
This one's gonna be fun. We gotta burn down piety. I'm done. I'm done asking the nice way. I'm done. I'm so done. I'm done. I am so, women are so good at it. And I have been the very worst among us, and I'm still hella nice. I'm done. But piety, right? Piety, politeness, not kindness, but this, this I'm above it veneer. I'm getting that wrong. It's not,
I don't know if I would call it piety, right? I think there is a piece of it that where our faith gets co-opted, like for us in the Christian tradition, like we do the forgiveness, turn the other cheek stuff, right? And
it's a foregone conclusion.
And we think if we're doing that, then we're like above. But I think what I really want to burn down is like my own fear that I'm only okay if I don't upset you.
Yep.
The message I got, and I think in part as a woman, was don't make a fuss. Just don't make a fuss. And I think that was independent of my faith tradition. It certainly was true in my faith tradition, but I think it's bigger than that. So yes, I'm done with the church being an actor in bad ways, which we know it has been since you and I last talked, and still is. But there's some reckoning that is still coming with just countless cases.
I won't do it anymore.
And let me just insert this: if the Christian church doesn't learn how to talk about sexuality in a healthy, affirming way, it's all lost. Like, that's a huge thing that I'm committed to personally in my own church. I'm like, we're gonna get some sex education up in here. We're gonna get faith-based. There's good stuff out there. There's one that the Unitarians helped come up with the UCC called Our Whole Lives. And it starts in kindergarten if you want to do it. And it starts by teaching our children to use the real names for their body parts. Because one thing that will deter a sexual predator is if a child can say the name of where he or she has been touched. So we've got to start affirming our creation as good and sexuality as a gift. If anybody had ever taught me that I wasn't a whore for wanting sex, if they had actually taught me from my earliest days that my body was capable of desire and that desire was good and that I got to make the call on that, that's the opposite of the piety that has kept us prisoner. So but like it's also risky. Like, I get scared to death when I talk about it because I can sit at your table and tell you this, but even standing up in my own pulpit, it's hard because I don't want to make anybody mad.
Right. Yes.
How do I get the courage to make people mad?
Yeah, and we're leaders. You're a leader. I talked to a Rabbi Yael has had the same experience this week. We lost congregants over a very brave Yom Kippur sermon about Me Too, immigration, people who can't abide. So I guess there's another thing we can draw from the histories of those who've come before us and known the struggle, is there's an idea of the politics of respectability. You have to say things the right way and be respectful and dress the right way and look the right way and say the right way. And sometimes you want to do that just because you want to affirm yourself and your own worthiness, but the fear of offending people at the cost of your own wholeness. We gotta burn down the Tupperware. Because I think the hardest leap is to understand that by protecting people from the truths of our lives, we're contributing to their own self-degradation. We're letting them continue to become the noxious, intemperate, embarrassments that Brett Kavanaugh showed himself to be this week. Privileged, lack of regard for institutions, for others, for our time, 10 days. She lived with that story for 30 years in her bones. So do we protect other people from taking responsibility for themselves when we keep it in the Tupperware?
Well, I mean, and one struggle that I face in my particular vocation is that I try to be very thoughtful about when I'm speaking as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ and when I'm just speaking as a human being, right? And I'm not saying that those are different a lot of the time, but like, I get to have an opinion on who I want to vote for. But when is that something that from a pulpit I want to say, here's what I think God thinks about that, right? Like, that's something I take really seriously. And I will confess, it's really hard to be prophetic and be pastoral at the same time. Because I know I know that there are people who will immediately stop listening. And I've got colleagues, many of them like Al, who have done the prophetic thing, who know that their faith is calling them to say things. And yeah, people leave. And they take their money with them.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's a real consequence. So what keeps me up at night this week is, what do I say to my people Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I say it?
Do you
I mean,
feel
that's mostly what I've felt like in the time since we talked. And when I went back and listened to what we said, you know, I was like, it'll never be enough. And it'll never be right. Like, there's no right answer to any of this. And I want to be better. I want to be more courageous. And I'm terrified to do that.
I think we have to overcome our white Christian middle class upbringing enough to know that doing justice sometimes is messy.
Yeah.
And it means you will make mistakes and not everyone will think you are good. It doesn't matter. Because the Spirit will carry you. History will carry you.
What do you think we do next?
I think we burn it down. But I think
How do we do that?
But I think you've you know, this conversation has helped me. So I'm grappling with the way we kept it bottled up so long. And I'm grappling with the craziness of how it feels when the adrenaline is coming this hard. And burning it down means making it so that not another generation has to do that. Because if the next generation doesn't have to bottle it up, that's a big contribution. That immediate ability to say, don't do that, that's wrong. You're acting like a total noxious, intemperate buffoon, and it's harmful to you and to me. Stop it. We've done as much as any generation could if we've unbottled that, if we've uncorked it. But we have to give them permission, and we have to uncork our own thing, and we can't give them only exemplars who are models of perfection. I can't. I killed myself trying to be perfect. But that's enough. I think if we could do that, if we could burn down that myth, the way that white women have allowed ourselves to be co-opted in the service of a privilege that we know has been harmful to all the people, well, then that's a win. I'll burn that down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the men.
And making people uncomfortable, even our sweet husbands who are good people, but sorry, dude, this week's gonna suck.
Well, I
I reserve the right for next week to suck.
Yeah, like, so I am trying to figure out too, like, how do we walk with them, right? How do we do what's ours and encourage them to do what's theirs, and then how do we find what we can do together?
Well, it's like any marriage, right? Marriage doesn't get stronger if you pretend you're perfect.
Right, yeah.
Or you withhold your truth.
Yeah, but like I think for every moment where one man tells another man, there's a lot of this. We should maybe listen. Like, I actually want to pause and be grateful for that.
Oh, yeah. We need them. I'm tired.
In a lot of ways, like, yeah, is it no duh or too little too late? But like I'm grateful for every man who is listening and who is thinking and who is reflecting.
And I don't want them just to do it for me, though, or my daughters or the women in their lives. I get sick when I hear people talk about that. You know who talk like that? Kavanaugh. Yeah. His wives, his daughters. I want them to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're opening their mouths is what saves them from being him. And that should be a big motivator. And there's lots of great men that do that. And calling other guys out when they're being jerks in whatever setting means that they have to put their privilege on the line too. That would be good.
Well, I've been trying to figure out, like, I'm not, like, I don't even know how to say this. I don't even know if I want this recorded, but like,
Pause.
I am trying to figure out like what it's like to be a decent white man in this moment. Because there are a lot of decent white men. And on some level, like it's gotta be like disorienting and scary. And like on the one hand, you don't want to be the bad guy, and yet you know you are, right? Like you now have become the kind of epitome of all that's wrong. Whiteness and maleness and like all the things, right? And as hard as it is some days to live in my skin, like I gotta imagine that's not an easy place to be.
Oh, it's terrible. They do that to each other. See, that's the thing. They do what they do to women, they also do to each other. I know that to be true. That's a fraternity. What do fraternities do? They destroy each other. At the center of white male privilege is mutual destruction.
Yeah.
They practice on each other, then they do it to girls, and they do it to black folks and brown folks. They practice on each other. Hazing is the example. It's where they learn it. The way little boys abuse each other. And it comes out of maybe some innocence, like, rough house play, that's good. But then where that pack dominance thing comes in.
Yeah.
So what would it look like to be a man and to have all those kind of impulses, I guess? I don't know. Hazy on the biology, and to change that culture. So that at the core of privilege, that men didn't put up with other men who humiliated them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hope that there'll be some new ways that men are going to do their work.
And we thought we had it figured out how to burn it down. We had a plan because we're planners. And just as she was leaving, my phone started buzzing.
We thought we were done. I let you go, and then I picked up my phone because it started blowing up. I'm like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, Jeff Flake, a member of my faith community who he's opened his mouth a lot, but he didn't do anything ever. He voted to advance Kavanaugh, but he called for an FBI investigation.
At least in part because of two remarkable women who confronted him in an elevator.
On Monday, I stood in front of your office with Addie Barkan. I told the story of my sexual assault. I told it because I recognized in Dr. Ford's story that she's telling the truth. What you are doing is allowing someone who actually violated a woman to sit in the Supreme Court. This is not tolerable. You have children in your family. Think about them. I have 2 children. I cannot imagine that for the next 50 years, they will have to have someone in the Supreme Court who has been accused of violating a young girl. What are you doing, sir?
I was sexually assaulted and nobody believed me. I didn't tell anyone, and you're telling all women that they don't matter, that they should just stay quiet because if they tell you what happened to them, you're going to ignore them. That's what happened to me, and that's what you're telling all women in America, that they don't matter. They should just keep it to themselves because if they have told the truth, you're just going to help that man to power anyway. That's what you're telling all of these women. That's what you're telling me right now. Look at me when I'm talking to you. You're telling me that my assault doesn't matter.
And there it was in their example. Everything we stumbled towards over the course of the last few months, over the course of this week, of our hour-long conversation, burn it down equals stop trying to do it the right way. Stop protecting us all against the truth when humanity is at stake. Speak truth to power and tell it to look you in the eyes. Don't worry about doing it wrong. It's your truth. You can't do it wrong. And this is what democracy needs from us. In part 2 of this episode, we're going to hear from 3 women experts, a historian of sexual violence, a historian of anti-sexual violence activism in the civil rights movement, and an expert in African American women's expressive culture. They're going to put #MeToo and #BeliefSurvivors and all of this into historical perspective to get the long view. Part 3 brings back Mary Sue and the experts in conversation. Now, mind you, these were taped before Brett Kavanaugh was nominated to the Supreme Court, before the historic Speak Truth to Power confrontation in the elevator. We didn't plan this week, just like we didn't plan what happened to us at 6, and 16, and 25, and 45. And when weeks like this happen, it can throw our best laid plans into disorder. And maybe that's how revolutionary changes, the changes that will ensure that the next generation doesn't have to. This is American Beauty. I'm Joanna Brooks. Please stick with us, subscribe, share, rate, and review today at iTunes. Follow us on Twitter and Insta at _Joanna Brooks. Check in at AmericanBeautyPodcast.com. Thanks to Rachel Taylor for sound production, K-Studio.